Jerry. Maybe not the best in mood. It is officially football season in Houston, Texas, is it not?
Sure is, Grant. Good to be on with you, buddy. The truth is, this is who they've been, though, Grant, this year. Less than 90 wins. I mean, they were 12-24 at one point, and they had. Think about this, Grant. Going into this real quick, into the playoffs, and to the first 60 games, the last 80 to 100 games, they were really good. 5 starting pitchers out, injured, 5 of them.
It's unbelievable.
If I would have told you at the beginning of the season, Tucker was going to miss 75 games, Bregman was going to miss some significant time, that Garcia, McCullers, Urquidy, J.P. France, Verlander missed some time, Christian Javier, all were going to be out, and most of them the majority of the season when it came to pitching, and that Kikuchi, Hunter Brown, and Framber Valdez were going to be as good as any threesome the second half of the season in baseball. You'd have said, and that was going to be the strength of their team, not hitting and not bullpen. You'd have thought I was nuts. Yeah. Well, but it caught up to him. Grant for all week long this week said, and last week, that with these playoffs, now that they've clinched and when they got in, the bullpen and timely hitting, if they will be the problem. The strength is starting pitching. Hunter Brown deserved better. That guy was attacking the zone and was a monster. They didn't hit well in clutch situations, and they're back into the bullpen. Gave up too much, and that happened way too often. That was the 2 weaknesses all year long: clutch hitting and the back in the bullpen. It caught up to. This is not surprising. The way the Detroit Tigers have played late. I don't believe in game-to-game momentum. I do believe in confidence. I believe in in-game momentum. Because, look, if you're the Astros, you're feeling good. Skubal comes in. That'll end. That's a punch to the face. That'll end momentum in a hurry. One good pitching performance. The resilience, the Tigers kind of remind me of the Astros 5, 6, 7 years ago. Not as many stars, but resilience. And the Astros had a hell of a season. Nothing to apologize for. They overcame a lot. But the truth is, they weren't going to win this thing. Their batting order was just not as productive, and the back end of the bullpen was not as good as expected at times, and it eliminated. I think a lot of people are excited for football. The run was going to end at some point. They made the playoffs, won the division. The window's still open, but they overcame a lot. They just weren't good enough. The timely hitting was off all year long for the most part.
All right, let's have some fun. Let's get 32 NFL general managers in the room, and they can take any quarterback they want. Let's just, for sake of conversation, agree that all 32 are taking Patrick Mahomes. Any argument there?
No. And is there a time frame on it? Are we talking about right now, Grant, or is there a time like 5 years, 3 years? Tell me.
No. Right now. So this leads me to my question. Okay. Where does C.J. Stroud go after Mahomes?
Top 5.
Exactly.
Right now.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, top 5, and it's Grant. I was thinking, is he top 3 yet? But it's Mahomes. That's he's our Michael Jordan right now, right?
Yep.
When it comes to NFL, and then you can mix and match Josh Allen, 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. The guy has proven that he's a player. You can throw in Joe Burrow when he's right. Their team's not as good as expected, but Burrow belongs in that talk because if Burrow was in Kansas City, they'd win a lot of games. Those 3, and then those 4. Stroud's that next guy. I think Stroud is in the, if you're not getting by 6 or 7 without him, you're just not. Aaron Rodgers when it's going well, but I'm going to say Stroud top 5, probably 5th. I would put him ahead of a lot of guys.
What's your take on Davante Adams and the Raiders situation? That's the team you root for. It just does seem like the Raiders never get it right. And I'm not blaming the Raiders for this, but something's not right there. And what a mess this has turned into.
Raiders feel like the Raiders, when they make decisions on personnel, feel like the Browns. And I love Cleveland fans, and my affinity for the Browns fans.
I know you do.
Better. My affinity for the Raiders, it'll never leave. But is this shocking, Grant, really, that Davante Adams wants traded? It is in this day and age of the player empowerment. Is it shocking that he wants traded? No, of course it's not. I almost expect it now from star players. Is it shocking that they're talking about, Tyreek Hill is, he said he woke up to trade rumors. I don't know if they're going to get rid of him or not and trade him, but think about that. So, they don't. And I don't know if there's some teams that just no matter what decision they make, it ends up being either average or a wrong, whether it's a quarterback or a receiver or a trade or a head coach or a general manager. And it's disheartening because they never made wrong decisions when they went after 38-year-olds when Madden and that group and Al Davis were around. They always seemed to get the one guy who'd come in and be the difference in 3 or 4 games on a trade from somebody else or a draft pick. And they've had some good seasons since Madden in the group, but the truth of the matter is, and Tom Flores, but they're a team that they just don't get it when it comes to the overall package of what's going on. Good players, but the parts are far better than the sum. And they're willing to give Davante Adams up for a second-round pick, apparently, and some other bodies or compensation. And if he doesn't want to be there and he's not going to be there, somebody else will get a hell of a receiver. But it's just, this doesn't surprise me. There's about 3 or 4 teams that, if you point to, it's like, do the Dallas Cowboys get it on a regular basis? Do the Raiders get it on a regular basis? We can go through 3 or 4 of them, and they will all, the Cleveland Browns, teams that are supposed to be good, that every year we're scratching our head. And those 3 are near the top of the list when it comes to teams that should be better.
Sean, help me out with this from your perspective. On Sunday, the Jets had 13 penalties, many false starts, and after the game, Robert Saleh talked about it. Aaron Rodgers really showed him up and said, how about some accountability? At a home game, not on the road, how the hell should you have 5 false starts? I mean, explain that to me, would you please?
And Grant, the reason I can answer this like with the same passion as Aaron Rodgers, anybody else, because we're going through that in Houston right now. Tunsil gets 3 a game.
Yeah, how does that happen? Especially at home.
And he does it at home because
Right.
they're not focused.
Right.
It's undisciplined. It tells me at times on the practice feed they let the shit slide. Now, maybe I'm wrong. And I think about DeMeco Ryans, and I think, that's not who DeMeco Ryans is. The irony of it, Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryans were both in San Francisco, and that's a pretty damn disciplined team.
Great
And
point.
I'm telling you, it drives DeMeco Ryans crazy, Grant. He's one of us when it comes to that young guy, middle-aged, but he gets it when it comes to old school football, right? And he knows that they're on borrowed time. They beat 3 average teams or 2 average, 1 bad, and they got smoked by a good team in Minnesota. And a lot of it is the offense not in structure, haven't been aggressive. When they are aggressive, it's very rare this year that on the offense, with the Jets are going through it and the Texans, that they're all 11 are doing the same thing right on every play, or at least on 75% of them. So, and those are 2 playoff teams that expect to be in the division hunt. It's inexcusable, man. It just is. Pre-snap horseshit penalties are undisciplined, unfocused. I don't care about it, and I don't know how they're practicing because we don't get to be out there when it's practice. It's closed. I don't know how they're practicing, but it would tell me somewhere along the line, I confess it's somebody else's fault. Well, I got to have quarterback cadence or my center snapping it or crowd noise. No, look at the ball, and when the ball moves, you go. Now, if you got to physically tackle Micah Parsons because he's running by you to kill your quarterback, then tackle him and take the holding penalty. I get that. Pre-snap penalties, and that is just lack of focus, and everybody wants to blame it on the coach. If they're allowed it to happen on the practice field, then it's inexcusable. Rodgers is right. It's accountability, and you look in the mirror and saying, we can't win. We're not good enough to overcome. And they're not. Neither team is. It'll eventually get you. And if they do it against Buffalo, the Texans, or if the Jets do it their next game, if it's a decent team, you'll get your ass handed to you. It's one of my head wants to explode. And I watch it, and you know what? We're going into this. What do you expect from the Jets this week? 8, 10 penalties. I expect double digits penalties from the Texans, and they're at home against Buffalo because they can't focus. And if their offense continues to do this team will make the playoffs because the AFC South isn't good anyway right now, and they will get smoked in the first round. If that's the case on the Jets, better talent, you're wasting it. And Rodgers is right. Offsides, offensive procedure penalties, I think on the road for the most part, you're going to make some, but to have that many, let alone at home, are inexcusable. And those are called undisciplined, unfocused. Average football teams do that shit. And it drives me nuts. Rodgers is right. Accountability. Stop the excuses for the player. It ain't the guy standing on a bench with the clipboard that's the problem. It's the player that doesn't have any accountability. I know it's tough to block people. It's even tougher when it's 1st and 15 or 3rd and 15. And you're putting your team in a bind, and if you can't account for that, hell, I'd start fining the guys if it gets to done. If you're one of those guys keeps doing it, dude, you jump off sides, put some money in the pot for the team party. This isn't inexcusable. Now, the CBA won't let you do that, but I'll be damned if there's accountable. Good teams are accountable and know when they look into the camera and say something to their teammates that they're taking accountability for their actions and put their team in a bind. It sucks.
And good luck with the Jets this week blocking the Vikings front. I mean, Minnesota's defense has been unbelievable. And based on what I saw last week against Denver, the Jets' offensive line not being able to protect Rodgers, I don't know why the hell they think they're going to do it this week in London.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, Grant, with Sam Darnold's getting a lot of credit, and rightfully so. He's playing really good football. Aaron Jones has been a great addition. But I will tell you this, and those tackles that offensive line for Minnesota has given Sam a chance to make good decisions, right?
Yeah.
And Kevin O'Connell's coach, the defense, their back end's hitting the hell out of you. Their linebackers run. And hell, 4 or 5 of the guys that were playing in Houston, when they played him, those guys all made the difference in the game on defense. That defense is playing like a team possessed. And Brian Flores and the two best right now, in my opinion, the way they're calling games this year. Spagnuolo, which is a normal occurrence. The guy is a great gamer.
Phenomenal.
Brian Flores, remember 2 years ago, they weren't good on defense when Flores first got there. They struggled even when he was a new defensive coordinator there. But the scheme, he understands how to attack certain offenses. I'm impressed because they are playing balls to the wall and aggressive. And those guys, when they're around you, they're finishing tackles. The Minnesota Vikings are real.
Yeah. You know what else we're learning? I did NBA games for years with Jerry Reynolds, former coach, GM, and he always said, don't give up on point guards and bigs too early. One thing that we should see when we see how Sam Darnold's playing, when we see how Baker Mayfield is playing, don't give up on quarterbacks too soon. Geno Smith, another prime example.
You gave the 3 of the best of the 32 teams, 3 of the best guys that, had you have been impatient and had no foresight with your organization, or a coach that gets around and knows how to teach it better and has patience with accountability, though. Listen, Sam put himself, and he threw the ball the wrong team to turn it over too often. Geno Smith didn't have the same confidence. Gets to Seattle, different story. Baker Mayfield, after 3 teams, finally settled in and playing like it's his team. And Grant, I'll guarantee the thing they all have in common, they're well coached with patience, but better players, but also they don't think they got to make every play. They're settling in as a veteran does. They're seeing defenses clear. They all can throw it. It's knowing where to throw the football now and getting through progressions and reads and understanding what you're looking at, which sounds so elementary, but listen, CJ Stroud recognized that Jaden Daniels in a couple months. Some guys, it takes 4 or 5 years. If we're judging them all the same, we just stick a bunch of robots out there and play on a computer. So they are different and their growth is different. And you are right. You are 100% right. Those guys, you say, damn, what's going on with them?
Yeah.
Well, in the toughest position to play in the world, you'd think you'd have a little bit of patience, especially those guys that are getting picked high are going to bad football teams. So I like it. And what I love about those 3 resilience, and the good players around you and good coaching matters, the resilience of those 3, not to believe what everybody told them. Journeyman busts.
Yeah.
And they all fought through it, which I'm proud of them for doing. That's a hard thing to do.
You know what, Sean? Very often, one of the common denominators is, what's the offensive line look like? That's why when I look at Chicago and Caleb Williams, I can't really evaluate him because that offensive line is so bad.
Yeah, and he's got to talk about a guy who's got to play hero ball, and he's going to make mistakes. If he doesn't make a bunch of plays, we saw Fields. Well, look at another one, journeyman Justin Fields. His numbers are better than Mahomes right now.
It's unbelievable.
It really isn't. Mike Tomlin has a way of making you be accountable. The one that Mike's greatest trait, aside from being able to get the players, he's got that feeling where you like him. I mean, you're his buddy, but don't cross that line. I'm your head coach first, and he makes you accountable whether you're a star or not. But yeah, Grant, the offensive line. Listen, think about Archie Manning, Grant, guy we watched growing up, right?
Yeah.
Archie. If Archie Manning is not on some bad teams growing up, Archie Manning is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The guy got his brains beat. If you stick Archie Manning with the Cowboys offensive line, we're looking at a guy like Roger Staubach.
It's a great point.
Throw it. He was accurate. He had great feet. So it does matter. And then you look at guys who went to those teams. You say maybe not as talented or good offensive line. And those guys Kenny Stabler couldn't move 4 inches from the pocket. He was flat-footed. And Kenny Stabler and Art Shell and Upshaw and Dave Dalby and George Beeler. I mean, that offensive line. And what did he do? Made every play and should have been in the Hall of Fame sooner than he was. So matter of fact, the strength of your team, Grant, is always, to me, you better have a good quarterback and good teachers that coach it. But if your front 7 on defense and your 5 guys up front on offense are not all on the same page and physical as all get out and if they understand who to block, you got it halfway licked right now. It's those guys up front. You can be a great player, but when you're throwing it from your ass, you become very average in a hurry.
I'm going to take you back even further than Archie Manning, because I was thinking of Joe Flacco, And I was trying to think of someone that from an era that I grew up watching football in the 60s reminds me of, and don't laugh when I tell you this, but he reminds me of Earl Morrall, who played on several teams. And whenever Earl went on to a team and came in, he always won and always played well, even very late in his stage. And that to me is what Joe Flacco looks like.
I can say here, and unfortunately for people who didn't get to see old crew cut Earl Morrall with Shula and Unitas, I can make a statement. You know, Don Strock was a hell of a backup. We had some in my era.
Yes.
To me, Strock played like 84 years and doing back in Marino, but he was always great and available and ready. I think those guys who we started games, took backup snaps, a lot of pride in making sure the coach didn't or the players didn't feel like they had to give up much when they put you in a game, that you could help win games even though you weren't going to be the starter. I'm going to tell you right now, for my money, you ain't naming three guys over Earl Morrall for a guy who come in, and you did not miss a beat when that dude came in. He had guts. He was tough, and he was a prick on the field, a great human being, and you know what? It's like Billy, the Billy Kilmers, the one bar where they're getting the hell kicked out and they keep hanging in there. Players love that about their quarterback. And Earl Morrall went in, helped win Super Bowls along the way, and one of the great players and teammates of all time.
But I mean, Joe Flacco, what he's doing, he's like, no matter what the situation, what we saw last year in Cleveland, what he did on Sunday in Indianapolis, it's unbelievable.
Let me tell you this. I'm not saying more talent at this stage of his career.
No.
But you could put Anthony Richardson and Deshaun Watson together, and Flacco's outplayed both of them in their cities. And if I'm Indianapolis right now, Flacco starts until he proves he's out. Just like, hell, right now Cleveland's saying, hey, can we borrow Joe back for about 3 more years until Deshaun Watson finally clues in? And it'll serve Anthony Richardson well, even if he's still the starter when it keeps going on, to look at Joe Flacco and follow him around like a baby duck follows a mother duck, because he gets it. And he's at the stage of his career. It's like, dude, I'm on borrowed time right now, man. I'm going to still study and take it serious, but all the game's moving so much slower for him, right? You can learn from guys like that. Joe Flacco, he's a winner, and he always has been.
I want to take you back to Saturday. What a game with that Alabama-Georgia. And it leads me to this. I think we'll see these two teams play again. And if I'm Georgia, I'm feeling pretty confident whenever that time comes. You're down 28-0 and actually had the lead in the fourth quarter. What a hell of a game.
Yeah, and you know what, Grant? A lot of times when your team is so good, like Georgia's been the last handful of years, and let me back up a second. You think Kirby Smart tore their ass to smithereens at halftime after they went, because he didn't want to. He knows Nick's watching the game. His teacher. He knows, and he don't want to be embarrassed on national TV. He could win 20 national titles, and he'd still be the same. That's one reason why I love him. I'll bet they went in there. It's like, this isn't going to be pretty. And everybody, you saw half the guys came out and they only had half an ass left after Kirby chewed it off. Yeah. But sometimes teams that are really good, Grant, if they get hammered in a game like that, it's almost like, I'll see you next week. We'll fight this back. We'll see them again. It would have been easy to not mail it in, but think about next week and say, this was Alabama's day. We'll catch them next time. But instead of that, they came out in the second half and applied every bit of accountability, which tells you, even though I don't believe in moral victories, I do believe in moments that say we're going to be okay. And I think this was one. And you know what? With 12-team playoff, it is not that big a deal that Alabama beat him. Now, the way they beat him in the first half, but just like they beat him in the first half, if you're now, Kalen DeBoer, you're going to your team saying, man, this is a huge win, but we got to watch this tape closely. Next time we play him, if we don't play 60, we won't get away with it. No doubt.
October 19th, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas. Don't miss those games.
Could be the Final Four, Grant. All of them literally, but it really could be. You could have 4 teams in the Final Four, right? Depending on where they're seated. They got Tennessee's quarterback is young and awesome, and I love Josh Heupel's fast-paced game. Boy. I would have put Ole Miss in there until last week. They just didn't quite, they just were off a little bit. Texas is a monster on both sides of the ball.
Oh, boy.
And we obviously know about Georgia and Alabama. And right now, there's some really good – Hunter's probably the best player in the country, but Milroe's playing out of his friggin' mind. And so is Cam Ward in Miami. But, man, I'm telling you, Tennessee, that's going to be one of the great Saturdays in all of 2024 watching those games. And Texas has got to stay focused because they also have – a sneaky one next week when they play they got Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout, right? So it's getting nut cutting time now, even though it's early in the season. And that Saturday you mentioned is going to be a fun watch all day.
I don't want to overreach here, but do you think Ryan Williams may be the best 17-year-old football player we've ever seen?
Best? Well, no. Grant, he's the best 17-year-old that is better than most 25 and 30, 28-year-olds. Now, when I watch him play, usually we look at like a guy like Derrick Henry and say, can you imagine having to tackle this cat in high school, right, running for 8 million yards? The pros don't even want any part of him. But in a different way because of his speed and ability, put it this way. If you could declare for the NFL draft and NFL teams could draft the kid before his 18th birthday, they would in the first 10 picks. So that ought to tell you, it's like, just stay healthy, young man, because by the time you're ready to roll, they're going to be standing in line. They're going to say, I mean, it's going to be one of those. We've had two wide receivers picked first, I think, in the draft. Keyshawn and Irving Fryer, I think.
Right.
I got news for you. 2 years from now, you may be looking at the third. He is as dynamic as I've seen in college football in a long time, especially for that age.
Again, we'll wrap this up.
He's going to the prom. He's going to the prom in March too.
That's right. I mean, I get the physical talent. I get all of that, but he seems to have everything you need up here as well, which to me is mind-boggling for 17.
Great. Hey, there's a lot of guys who can run and catch and run routes and the rest of it. His football IQ and awareness on the field seems to me, and his instincts seem to be that. Grant, you can't teach that in the first 17 years. You could teach him to think that way, and try to accomplish it. But it's like he's one step ahead with his mental game at 17 friggin' years old. Has he even taken the SAT yet? I mean, he should still be like a junior in high school. The guy's a phenomenal player, but I love watching him play football, not just the speed and what he does, how he handles every single snap. Love him. Great player.
Sean, good luck on the radio tomorrow, man.
Well, it'll be an easy day because we're just going in, pushing a button, taking all the calls. We're going to sit there and listen to a bitch for 4 straight hours and how awful the Astros were, and we're rebuilding when they still got some great players. Oh, yeah, tomorrow's the easy show. If they'd have won, it's like, okay, we expected it. Now it's the loss. Oh, my gosh, it's going to be 2 more days of great bitch fest, and I can't wait for it, brother. It's going to be awesome.
All right, take care, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
All right, bye-bye. That's good stuff from Sean Salisbury. Oh, my goodness gracious. Wow. Good stuff right there. And don't forget, we've got another show coming up for you, 8 o'clock. That's right, in a couple of hours, 8 o'clock. Rhino and Sacktown will be with me, and we'll be doing this all over again. Until then, so long, everybody, and thanks so much to Sean Salisbury. I love Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. Doubleheader day. See you at 8 o'clock. Bye-bye now.